Hello, everyone. Jason Hagholm here, and after a 3-week break due to the holidays and New Year's and potentially storming a Capitol building, it's the return of Jason and the Gentleman. And as always, I am joined by the gentleman of mixed martial arts, the gentleman Josh Hill. Josh, how are you doing? How are your holidays, and how's everything going?
I'm all right, man. I'm good. Holidays were good for we made the best of a weird year that kind of sucked. But we like I said, we made the best of it, and things are still still not back to normal yet, or somewhat close to normal. But we're good, man, and we're happy. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I had a nice Christmas and, as like everyone else, a pretty dull New Year's. But you know what? I always thought New Year's was overrated anyway, so
Yeah.
staying home wasn't the worst thing. But Christmas was good. You had a good time with the young kids as well.
Yeah, they're at 10 and 2, so they're at really good ages, right? For Christmas is exciting, especially my little 2-year-old now. She actually gets Santa and all that kind of stuff, so it's fun.
Get anything exciting for Christmas for yourself?
Yeah, we bought a hot tub, so that's the big purchase, which has been saving me right now. I've been in like every day, loving it. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but I got this wicked Ninja Turtles arcade game.
Okay, that's
Um, yeah,
that's amazing.
my parents bought for I think for my stepson Carter, but it's definitely for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're repping the brand right now on your shirt, I see. But and before we get into talking fights, how's the back feeling? It's been 3 weeks since we last talked.
Hey man, that's the one thing that I've been just going nuts with because it's taken forever and it just I've been doing everything I possibly can and so right now I'm just literally going in and out of the hot tub and heat and ice and whatever I can do to get it back to it's getting better like I said, but I'm very impatient and it's just taking way longer than I thought. I think it's just literally a decade of training, driving an hour, training an hour and a half hard, not properly recovering, stretching, whatnot, getting back in my car, driving another hour and doing that for, like I said, almost a decade. So I think it's just kind of taking its toll and I need to put some time into some recovery here for my body.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, it's a new year, and we're really hoping that we get to see you back in the Bellator cage. And I mean, we're still waiting on Bellator to release their schedule. I don't know what's going on with that, but nonetheless, we got to get you out there, and we got to get some of these events going because we've now reached the point, Josh, where the break is over, and we're gonna get some events. There are like four of major events really this weekend. Starting Friday, there's a UAE Warriors show in Abu Dhabi. There's an LFA show. More importantly, though, there's a UFC show, a early UFC show on ABC Network, which is huge, and as well before that, there is a Brave show, their debut in Russia. But let's take a look at this UFC show, Josh. I mean, it's an excellent main event for Calvin Kattar versus Max Holloway. Max Holloway's first fight at featherweight without a title being on the line in what feels like forever. But more importantly, this show's on ABC. It's counter programming to the NFL playoffs. I mean, as a fighter who has been in the game for a while, what's it mean for you to see once again another network, a major network in the United States, pick up a MMA show? Because I mean, the sport just keeps growing.
Yeah, it's you get to see the progression of it, especially like since when I started in this sport, you is like, pay-per-view and Spike was like the two things we could watch it on, but now it's growing. I remember when they went to Fox and Bellator with CBS now and then ABC and ESPN. So it's good. I love it, man. The evolution of the sport, it's getting seen by more and more people, more eyeballs. It's now a kind of a mainstream sport instead of that weird cousin sport that only some people watch. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's good. More eyes on what we do, the better.
Yeah, I mean, this is a network, ABC, that is, had the tradition with ABC's Wild World of Sports. They'd put, pretty much everything on there. And they had a big boxing background. I remember a lot of big boxing fights back in the day. And, it's been like 20 years since Combat Sports is on there. And, when you look at this card, Josh, it's an excellent card. And let's start at the top. I mean, we said main event, Calvin Kattar versus Max Holloway. Holloway's coming off the real close split decision loss, or not split decision loss, but decision loss against Alex Volkanovski in a second chance for him to win the UFC featherweight championship. And, Calvin Kattar is a guy that's, been in the game for a long period of time. He's had a solid 2020. He had that devastating elbow against Jeremy Stevens at UFC 249, and then won a pretty competitive 5-round main event against Dan Ige. And right now, Kattar's riding the best momentum he's ever had right now in his career against a former UFC featherweight champion.
Yeah, this is a big opportunity for him for sure. Main event, fighting a former champ, and a lot of people that consider one of the best featherweights. So this is a big opportunity, man. He's a big featherweight, really, really good striking, very versatile, durable, and very tough. So he's not an easy fight for anybody. But that being said, Holloway is exactly what I just said, and he's championship material, been at the top for I don't know how many years now. But yeah, he's in a weird spot. He's coming off 2 losses. He lost his belt to Volkanovski, and in the rematch, a lot of people thought he won that fight. It was a close fight, but he definitely doesn't want to drop 3 in a row. Nobody does, but yeah. So it's an interesting. I think it's there's more to gain here for Kattar, I think, than there is to Holloway. Holloway, his biggest pickup will be get back in the win column and get another hunt for that belt again, but. It should be an interesting matchup because both guys are huge featherweights, and I think you're going to see more so of a striking match.
What do you like? And that's what Holloway's expecting. He is expecting to throw down, no real wrestling, no grappling. He wants to, slug it out with Calvin Kattar, who feels like he's got some devastating punches and elbows. But, Holloway going into this fight, he feels like he didn't lose the Volkanovski fight because most of the MMA media and fighters alike felt he did win that fight. Like, I scored it for Volkanovski. I don't know how you scored the rematch, Josh. Did you score it for Volkanovski or Holloway?
I think it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure I scored a 3-2 Volkanovski, I think. But it was like, honestly, that it was like I would have probably gave it a draw just because it was that close, So it really could have been either way.
Yeah, but and I agree. I think really when you look back at that fight, that third round was so close it could go either way, and that's what the fight really tilted on. But Holloway feels like he didn't lose that fight. And I think that's a huge mental and momentum factor for him going into this fight up against, Calvin Kattar, who's been in the game for a while, but, finally on that chance to break through at 145.
Yeah, and that's a good mindset to have, man. Because sometimes you get so worked up, I can't lose, and I can't lose 2 in a row, I can't lose 3 in a row. I mean, you put too much pressure on yourself. But Holloway's always been a mentally tough and mentally sharp competitor, so I don't think that would affect him anyway. But yeah, that's a great mindset to have going into it.
And Calvin Kattar, as I said, with those 2 wins he had in 2020 against Ige and Jeremy Stevens. But, you got to think, Kattar's been around a while. He's been around so long. He was on the undercard of Elite XC's debut on CBS back in 2008. Now, he lost that fight and is hoping to change that vibes on network TV. But this is a guy been grinding away. And this New England cartel group that he's associated with, they're doing big things. Look at what just Rob Font did to close out the UFC in 2020 against Marlon Moraes. That's an organization and a group of guys that's really on the verge of being maybe the next breakthrough thing in a sports crazy town like New England.
Yeah, that's they're putting good things out there, man, and Font's been a guy that's been around a long time too. So it's kind of like they've paid their dues and put in all this time and grind away, and then now they're coming to their own and in their prime, and they're putting things together, and things are just clicking. And a lot of times when one or two people at your camp that happens to them, it's easily contagious, and that could start to happen to all your guys if you have that same positive mindset. And yeah, you're seeing it happen right now. You'll see it. It goes through camps, man. We've seen it with Greg Jackson's camp. We've seen it with Shootbox. We've seen it with Miltich back in the day when they had all the champs. You kind of get all these champs at one time, and this camp's doing it, and then they kind of drop off, and then they come back and they drop off. And I think you're seeing that here now too.
Yeah, and as you said, it's always nice and refreshing to see guys that have paid their dues and finally make their break on through to becoming potential title challengers like Kattar will be if he gets the win. But Featherweight's going to be interesting if Cater does not get the win, because Volkanovski doesn't really want to have a third go against Holloway. And in reality, he doesn't have to. He's beat him twice. But where does this 145-pound division go if Holloway wins and Volkanovski doesn't want to defend the title against him?
I think you'll probably see Ortega
Yeah.
get in there and probably get a shot at Volkanovski, just because, like you said, they've have fought twice now, and they just want probably some new blood in there for the title. If Volkanovski gets through Ortega, you can possibly do the third fight, or if maybe Holly gets another win. I don't know. It depends on what they want to do. But I think if Ortega wins, then and Holloway wins, that's a good fight right there. So either way, you're looking at some good tilts at 45.
Yeah, 145 has always been one of my favorite divisions. And yeah, you're probably right. If Holloway does win, it would be Ortega next. Because he looked, as we broke down back after his win against Chan Sung Sung, he looked so good. His striking was the best we'd ever seen. So yeah, he probably gets that next title shot. But, when you look at this co-main event, Josh, this is the people's main event for people that have been covering and following mixed martial arts for a long time. It's finally happening. It's Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown. Finally, these two will actually get together. It's a fight they've been trying to make many times over. It's the former UFC welterweight champion, or interim welterweight champion, and WEC welterweight champion versus Matt Brown, who was like almost on the verge of that, but unfortunately fell through, the unofficial UFC TV champion back in the Fox era days. But I'm just so excited for this fight. Like, two guys at the end of their road, but finally matching up against each other.
Yeah, I like this, man, for many reasons. One, because it's a recipe for violence.
Yes.
Both guys are just, warriors, been around the game for a long time, and I love watching both of them fight. They're both very exciting. And two is, they're both older in their career. You know what I mean? They're both, they're not up and coming young lions that are tearing through guys, and I do like that matchmaking. Both guys, it's an equal chance to win, I think. Sometimes you see, that the older guys stick around, they put him in there with some young killer, and then, he kind of makes that name off him, which I get it, but it sucks to see. I think it sucks to see because I love Condit so much, right? So, when he got his last win, I was super stoked to see him finally get back in the win column after a rough road there for a bit. And Matt Brown, man, I'm a big fan of Matt Brown. He's a guy that he kind of just showed like he didn't always have that much of a skill set. I mean, obviously he's very good, but he's just that durable, tough guy that goes out there and knocks guys out and finds ways to win. And he's proven himself time and time again. But yeah, I think both of them match up. I think it's gonna be a war. I'm gonna have to predict somebody. I'm gonna go with Condit. I'll go with TKO.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that someone has to lose this fight because I love both guys. Like, I feel like Brown was put in that spot where they were kind of trying to phase him out when he fought Eric Silva, and
Yeah.
he then ended up finishing Eric Silva and still
Yeah.
gave himself another couple years of a career. I mean, he's Cincinnati tough, and those guys from that part of Ohio are always scrappers. I mean, that state produces so much, toughness and what have you, and no quit, as we saw the other night in the football game with the national championship. But I mean, Condit as well. Like, Condit looked so good against Court McGee. It was nice to see him back and finally hopefully get over these injuries. As you said, it's going to be a recipe of violence, and for the newer fans as well, they finally will get to see glimpses of what these guys were. Like 10 years ago now. It's hard to believe I'm even saying that it's 10 years ago that these guys were on that run, but I'm so excited for this fight. I think it's the perfect co-main event as well. Like, this is a fight that can bring a lot of eyeballs in just because of their history.
Yeah, yeah, and for those that don't know them, get them a chance to see, the former WEC champ and interim champ, a guy that, was at the top there right with George and almost finished George, man. Knocked George down, and he was, the number 2 in the world at the one time there with when Georgie was on his reign. But yeah, both guys are solid, and they both deserve that recognition.
Yeah, I mean, there's another big welterweight fight on this card. It's the return of Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's a guy that's always been durable. We haven't seen him in the UFC since 2018 when he finished Neil Magny. I mean, let's put that in perspective. That's a huge feather in his cap, taking on a very dangerous Chinese fighter, the Leech. Li Jingliang. I mean, Jingliang took this fight only in a couple weeks notice, but Jingliang's last fight was a loss to Magny. So they have that similar opponent, even though it's like now 3 years or 4 years removed. But I'm just happy to see Ponzinibbia in there because he's a guy that feels he has a lot to prove since he's been taken out of the rankings. And,
Yeah.
we've talked so many times how the rankings don't mean much, but he
Yeah.
feels slighted because he was on the verge of a title shot. But it's nice to see someone like, Ponzinibbia get back in there because I've been high on him for a long time.
Yeah, it's been forever since he had been in the cage. I actually kind of almost started forgetting about him. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like we said, the rankings don't mean anything. But I get it that if you're inactive that long, they kind of got to move on with the division, and you're not going to get, a title shot when you come back after that long, or even a number one contender fight. But I think a big win here for him propels him into one of those top tier guys, and then a win there could definitely put him in a title contention.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, more importantly, it's nice to see him back. But
Yeah.
Jinglian's a tough guy. Like of a lot of these Chinese fighters that have come into the UFC, he's had a big run. Like he just had in March his like a 3-fight win streak snapped, and he looks to get back on track. And these Chinese fighters, they're always so durable, and they can make it a long night for you, especially for Ponzinibbia is good, but a 4-year layoff or whatever it has been. That's a
Yeah.
long time out of the cage.
It's a very long time out of the cage. So it kind of depends. That first round's going to be the weirdest, I think, for him. And if he gets by that first couple minutes, then I think he'll be smooth sailing and kind of get that, we want to call it ring rust or whatever off. But it's going to be weird too for him because he's going to come back and no fans,
Yeah.
which is different. I don't know if that'll play beneficial, maybe, or be a little bit too awkward, but it definitely be a different scene than he's used to.
Yeah, I mean it's totally different. Like I know a lot of fighters I've talked to, and you've experienced it just yourself. It's just a little different the first time you're out there because you're so used to the fans, and they can give you that energy rush when you don't have it. You just hear it, and it kind of wills you on. But there's going to be no one there, and I think there are going to be fans there. There are fans for these UFC events on Fight Island. They did sell tickets to
Like
the
a certain
event
amount
now.
or something.
Yeah, like a limited capacity with, pretty solid actually COVID protocols, but like tickets were ranging from like 250 to a couple $1,000 American, and plus you got to get airfare to get to Abu Dhabi as well. So, who's got that money, right? To
Yeah,
just go
those
check
Abu
out some
Dhabi
fights.
guys, man, $2,000 is like $20 to them. It is,
For them, yeah, but like if
yeah,
you're like, hey, I want to go out there and see some fights, you can't. But I mean, you could if you had the money. But I mean, that I think will be interesting. There will be some sort of a fan element for these events, which will be nice to see as well because it's been since like March since we've had fans at an MMA event.
yeah, coming up a year, right? So it'd be nice to see some fan interaction again, and maybe hear a little bit of cheers, and get people actually to be there and kind of have a glimpse of what a normal life used to be like.
Yeah, I know the NFL's had some limited fans at some of their stadiums. I know the state of New York let fans in for the Bills playoff game and will be again for this weekend. But even like 6,000 fans in a 70,000 state stadium, it felt so loud. So that was kind of a nice thing as well. So you know what, that'll impact the broadcast in a positive light as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, it'll anything is better than having nobody there at all. I think even if I have like 50 fans there, it definitely be beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. But and I mean, Joaquin Buckley returns. I mean, this was a guy that had the knockout of the year in 2020.
Yeah.
He's someone the UFC is looking to push. I mean, he called out James Krause in his last fight. They didn't make that fight. He's taking on Italian Alessio Di Chirico. But another one of these Italian guys that are trying to make something happen. Though Di Chirico is 0-3 in his last 3 in the UFC up against Joaquin Buckley. So it's kind of like they're setting Buckley up here to get that fantastic knockout, or as they would say in pro wrestling, a verge of a squash match. Though I don't want to disrespect Di Chirico, but nonetheless, it seems like they're really trying to keep the momentum going behind the Buckley train.
Wait, are you calling him a jobber?
No, I am not. Not at all. I am not. But it feels that way. A guy that's won 2 in a row against someone that's 0-3 in the UFC, and kind of just setting him up for something.
Yeah, for sure. This matchmaking, there's no secret to what they're looking for. They're looking to one guy to exit, probably, and looking to make a name off another guy with maybe another highlight or a finish. But I don't really know anything about his opponent. 0-3. in the is it 0-3 in the UFC or just three last losses?
Last three, he's 0-3. He has like one or
Yeah.
two wins in UFC.
Oh yeah, okay. But yeah, I definitely think this is one of those for him anyway. That's to win, must win situation.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But I mean, you get a win against Buckley. I mean,
Yeah,
talk
I
about
mean,
then readjusting your career so quickly.
it's an yeah it yeah. I guess you look at it like that for sure. It's a big opportunity, kind of steal that guy's steam and momentum, and a guy that they're looking to really hype up. And if you jump on that and squash him, then it kind of propels you that much further than just some other fighter that really doesn't have that momentum going.
Yeah, I mean that's the main card for this show, and I'm excited for it because once again, another early UFC is always to me the best thing. It is counter programming like the NFL, so you can see where Disney as a whole what they want to do. They want to take those audiences away from Fox, who has the early game. But I'm excited for it. I'm excited for just the platform and see like will they add any other special elements to it? Because that would make it really cool. And it's something I thought Bellator would do when they got on CBS Sports Network. Some different elements production wise. It's when Bellator got there, it's still the same type of production. You wonder if UFC would do that. I mean, they have the potential.
I don't think they do, man. When you look at all these things, like you look at what you said, Bellator, they kind of stayed the same with their thing. And then when the UFC was on Fox, it felt like football. You know what I mean? It just didn't really seem anything unique to the actual promotion itself. So hopefully they do something different. It'd be just kind of cool. But I would bet that it's probably just going to be the same type of thing they usually do.
Well, yeah, I mean, UFC is the one that are in charge of the production and everything like that. So maybe I'm just getting my hopes up, but nonetheless, I would like to see something different. If you ever watch Monday Night Football on ESPN, like some of the graphics they do are just unbelievable. It's like a mini video game, some of these graphics that they throw out there. And it'd be kind of cool to see with the add that to a UFC flair, which is one of the biggest properties on ESPN. So that would be cool. But that's the one major show. I mean, we're still early into this. We're what second week into full week into January. But Josh, when I looked at the calendar today, today's January the 12th as we were recording this show. Back on this day in 2013 was the final Strikeforce event. And it's kind of crazy that Strikeforce has been gone now, what? How many years is this now? Is
8 years?
2000, 8 years, yeah. 8 years since Strikeforce has been gone.
Wow.
And that's just an era of MMA that's, getting almost a decade in the past. And, first of all, what were your memories of Strikeforce? Because I always thought Strikeforce was just a fun, cool, like totally opposite of what UFC was doing promotion.
Yeah, I love Strikeforce, man. I was a huge fan. I guess a memory to me, me, Lyndon, and a couple buddies, we drove out to Chicago to see Fedor versus Brett Rogers. Was
Oh,
the
wow.
Yeah, and there was also who was it? Mayhem Miller, and I think I want to say it was Jake Shields.
Yeah, they fought for their welterweight title. Yes.
Welterweight title, yeah. So those were the two main fights, and we had a blast. I remember. I think I was like I don't know what year that was, but I might have been like 1 or 2 and 0. I just started our careers, both of us, and we like snuck down to the back to try to get to see Fedor because he was our, heavyweight idol, and we just had a blast, man. And the show was awesome. The production was great. I love, they had the Mayhem's crazy walkouts with all the chicks dancing, and to be able to see Fedor walk out, man, it's something that you gotta, see in person just because they make him like that the last emperor, I mean, they make it a show, and it's awesome. And the fight, itself, when he beat Rogers was pretty sick. So that's probably my biggest memory of Strikeforce. And of course, I think like everybody, probably yourself, was the brawl.
Yes, the brawl after Jake Shields beat Dan Henderson and Mayhem
Yeah,
Miller asked where his rematch was,
yeah,
and then that's when Stockton's finest laid a whooping all in the center of the Strikeforce cage and officially got MMA off CBS for up until now. Like MMA hasn't been back on CBS up until that point, and of course Gus Johnson with the memorable call. These things happen in MMA. Just remember that, like, oh God, no. But yeah, actually, like that was I think the first Strike Force on CBS was the Brett Rogers Fedor fight, which like I just remember watching the energy in the building when that fight was going on was unbelievable because like if you haven't seen the fight, you need to go out of your way to see it. But Rogers like nearly finished Fedor, which I thought for someone that was a fan of Brett Rogers, especially from the Elite XC days, like I always felt they were marketing him to maybe fight Kimbo in a big pay-per-view fight, but then
Mhm.
Elite XC folds. But Brett got this opportunity, and he looked so good. Unfortunately, gassed out. But the knockout Fedor had in that fight was like out of this world, like totally turned Rogers inside out. Like, what was the energy like in the arena since you were there?
It was crazy, man. It was awesome. It was everything you would expect it to be with like a Fedor fight like that. It had that kind of magnitude. If you were a fan, especially if you were a fan of the Pride days, right?
Yeah.
That was the main reason we went down there, just because we loved it so much. But yeah, it was great, man. And you know what? I even remember seeing for the first time. I had no idea who she was, but Roxanne Modafferi was on that card.
Oh
And
yeah.
I remember, like, I looked and I just seen, like, we went to, I think we went to the weigh-ins too, if I can't remember right. But I remember I just seen her. I'm like, she's fighting. You know what I mean? I was like, she's fighting. And then she went out there, and I can't remember if she won or not, but I was like, kind of like, oh my gosh, yeah, she's actually is. And then, sure enough, years later, I kind of followed her career, and then on the Ultimate Fighter together. But I remember seeing Roxanne for the first time ever fight that night. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean that was quite the event, quite the evening, and like I remember just the promotion on like the NFL on CBS. They were like Fedor's taking on Brett. It was like kind of cool. Like you hadn't really like sure MMA had been on CBS with Elite XC, but that was kind of a messy ending, and it was like okay, CBS was giving MMA the second chance, and Strikeforce was kind of that stable promotion that had a good visionary behind it, and in Coker obviously you work for him now as he's in charge of Bellator. But man, it was just a fun promotion. Like they had their own guys, like those Melendez Thompson fights
Yeah,
that
those
really
are,
put the promotion on the map. And
yeah.
Coker had a couple events at like the Playboy Mansion. Like I remember that. Like there's just a, a talented amount of guys that were making their own foot in MMA at a time where I don't know if we could see that again. I mean, it's a struggle right now for some of these guys in non UFC promotions to do that. But it's something that I miss. It was just an era of MMA that's gone. But yeah, it's crazy how many years ago now that Strikeforce had their last show with Tarek Safadine taking
Yeah.
on Nate Marquardt in the main event for the Strikeforce welterweight title.
See, there. I was gonna say, like, there's a lot of big names that came over, Tarek
Yes.
Safin was a huge name. Even in UFC when he started, he was pretty big, and then I don't know, he kind of just fizzled off. But like, that Cormier, won was it called the Grand Prix? I think it was Grand Prix,
He
right?
did win the Grand Prix. He was an
Yeah.
alternate as
He
well.
was an alternate, yeah. So you got Cormier coming out of there, beating guys like Barnett and Bigfoot Silva, and you got Luke Rockhold coming out of there, and he went on to be UFC champ. You had, like you said, Gilbert Melendez and the Thompson. Those fights were crazy good. Yeah, there was Nate Marquardt. Um, I believe he knocked out, wasn't it Tyron Woodley?
He did. He's one of
Yeah,
the first that finished
yeah.
Tyron.
Yeah, and like so all these guys come over from there, and they just kind of took over the UFC, and there was a lot of success from the Strikeforce guys in the UFC. So it was kind of cool to see.
And I think as well, like I know Elite XC were the first promotion to have like these challenger shows to help build up and coming prospects, but the talent that a Strikeforce challenger show. I watched a show from 10 years ago, January the 7th, 2011. It had Daniel Cormier. The main event was Tarek Safadine versus Tyron Woodley. But on that card, it also had Julia Budd versus Amanda Nunes, where it's like you had former Bellator women's featherweight champion versus a double champion in the UFC in Amanda
Yeah.
Nunes, who's arguably right now the greatest of all. Like that's something I think the sport's missing. Like sure you can have these smaller shows, but it was kind of cool to see like okay, there's going to be a Strikeforce big event, but you got to work your way up to get there.
I like that, man. I think that's cool. I would like it if the bigger shows, like if UFC did that, if Bellator did that. Bellator kind of does a little bit different. Like what they do is they have their main card full of their exclusively signed fighters, and then a lot of the times, or what they're doing anyways, pre-pandemic was wherever city they were going, they would kind of fill the first 5, 10 fights, whatever, in the undercard of guys that have lesser experience. for one fight deals. This way they can pull in a lot of people for ticket money, and it gives them a chance to fight for a bigger promotion. And if they do well, they can continue to fight there and get a full a bigger, longer deal, which I think is pretty cool. But I would like the almost like a farm league type system,
Yeah.
like a Bellator, like you said, challengers or UFC challengers, something like that. That would you're fighting. You're at the top step right before the big promotion, and you can make your name there and then jump into one of the bigger shows. I think it'd be kind of cool system. And then also, if you have a go on a rut and you lose, whatever, I mean, in a row, they could, drop you down, almost like dropping a baseball player down in the minors. Pick up a couple wins here again and you come back up type thing. I think it would kind of just be interesting and a kind of cool system.
Well, that's kind of what UFC did, because like Nate Marquardt got that steroid suspension, and UFC had bought Strikeforce at that point in time. Zuffa had, but they didn't want to put him in the UFC, so they put him in Strikeforce,
Right.
and it was like he was working his way back up to get to the UFC and had a couple more fights. But yeah, it's something that I just missed. Plus, you get someone like Tyron Woodley, you can see the full development. Like, he
Yeah.
started out in Strikeforce as a challenger. You can see, like, he's just really a wrestler. Then he gets his hands going, and now he was a UFC champion. Sure, he's on the tail end, but you can follow a guy's full career progression with in front of the lights and the cameras. And like, I think that's the thing. A lot of fighters, it takes a while to get used to. Like, I don't know, like for you were fighting in front of cameras pretty much your whole career, so it's now an easy thing for you. But there's a lot of guys that it takes a while for them to get in front of a camera and put on a performance.
No, yeah, you're right. I did start really. My first ever fight was televised, but it took me, I would say, probably at least 10, 11 fights, 12 fights before I actually became comfortable in the cage and kind of was in that right mindset. But so, and I think the problem is I didn't have any amateur fights, and I think that's very important nowadays for the guys to get in there and get at least 5 amateur fights just to kind of get the feeling of people watching you compete and not just compete, like having to go through adversity and whatnot. So I think that's is key. But yeah, you don't see that a whole lot. One I could think of just one-off example right now is a guy like AJ McKee, who was kind of like that bred. I think he's had all of his fights in Bellator or pretty close to it, if not. So that's the kind of guy that you could kind of see come up his whole career, and you could follow it and see the evolution of it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I missed that day. I missed the vision of what Strikeforce did. Like, you're never gonna see a show at the Playboy Mansion again or anything like that, or if it's gonna be one of those like wild shows that we've seen from Thailand, or like I remember Strikeforce is like, we're gonna have our main show in the summer on a Wednesday night. Like, just thinking outside the box like that, it's just something that needs to be done more, I think, to help separate yourself. Like the red and blue gloves. I know Bellator does it now, but there's little things like that helps, separate yourself. And, they had crazy ideas like the Grand Prix, like they thought outside the box. And I think that's an era of fun that's no longer really in MMA. Like, sure, MMA is fun and there's great fights, but there was so much more options as well. Like with that, I know there's other promotions, but it felt like Strikeforce was really, they were the number one competitor to UFC. And we don't really have that right now. I know Bellator has really rebranded themselves, but Bellator doesn't feel like what Strikeforce felt like.
Yeah, I think we need more of the kind of weird to say, but like the old school WCW style.
Yes.
I want the battle in the beach. I want the Halloween Havoc. I want, you know what I mean? I want those type of like kind of venues, where you can, it's not just the regular arena, something that's kind of unique and different. You don't have to do it all the time, but just something that you could throw in there, kind of periodically, and just to have a different, like you said, the Playboy Mansion, or going to, like something outdoors where, I know that's kind of harder to do, but or just something that's different. They used to do the Air Force Base and the hangars. That was kind of cool. Different, thing. So I like picture it as like a video game, and like you're going to different levels, and you're just kind of have a different setting for the fans and for the fighters too.
Oh, well, Josh, when hopefully COVID's over, you can be the one to come to Scott Coker like, Bellator Bash at the Beach in the summer. Coney Island, let's do it. Like, I honestly would love that. You probably have to pay a lot to get the naming rights from WWE, but nonetheless, an event on the beach or something like that, something we haven't seen in MMA since what, like Bodog Fight Days. So
Yeah.
we need to bring that back. And yeah, so let's pour one out for Strikeforce. Now 8 years gone from us, and it's crazy as well. Like we don't have WEC, and I just miss that era of MMA. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of talent. Like Cormier was on this show in the co-main event. Like that's just crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's the days of. I mean, like I said, we still have other promotions like PFL and Bellator and One, which is great. Just the ones in North America where it kind of before they all kind of got bought. I guess you could say Elite XC and then the Strike Force and WC and then Affliction at one time was like the up and comer and they kind of had that cool idea. And I was actually listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was Chael, and he was talking to the guy that was running it and
Tom
just
Atencio.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And you were just kind of talking about, like the ideas they had, the amount of money they were paying guys,
Yeah.
which was insane. I mean, it was great for the fighters, but they were definitely, I guess, overpaying. They could have paid the fighters well and not overpaid them to kind of put them into I don't know, the place of bankruptcy. I think Tim Sylvia got like 800K or something like that at the time to fight Fedor, where his last fight before that, I think he got like 16K or something. So it was crazy. But I mean, I did like the vibe of their shows, and it kind of reminded me when I was in Russia fighting up there, and the production they put on, man. Like I've talked about before, is just like they had like a live concert going on pretty much. It was like your walkouts where people had like violins, and the one with people like they had like people swinging from like the rafters, and I mean, it was a show. I mean, it wasn't just you going there just to watch fights. It was like you're going there for all round entertainment plus fights.
Yeah, someone needs to make like a 30 for 30 on like the rise and fall from like 2008 to 2009 of
It was
like
yeah.
Elite XC and Affliction, where it was like, wow, there's three companies that are actually making a run for at the UFC, and I'm like, it's great for fighters, especially as you
Yeah.
said, like the paychecks that Affliction's throwing out were great, but Elite XC I've always thought was like the true promotion that was really making a run at Dana and UFC. Like they had Kimbo Slice, they had a couple of guys that fought in the UFC. Like Robbie Lawler was their middleweight champion. I mean, Nick Diaz was there, and they got on CBS first, but they also spent way too much on these other promotions like Cage Rage and stuff. And they spent $10 million on a website. Like you cannot be spending that much money
Wow.
on a website and just draining yourself. And then when Kimbo lost, like that was it for them. But yeah, like the history of the sport isn't something that's talked about a lot. It's a lot of people just thinking it's just UFC and that's everything. But
Yeah.
people really need to look into like the run that Elite XC and Affliction had, because that was some of the most entertaining eras that this sport's ever had. And hopefully we can get back to that with some other promotions, because there's more options for everyone's the better.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the real true fans that have been around for a long time know these kind of stories. It's like I mean, I'm just guessing here, but comparative, like the WWE fan nowadays, like the real fans know about the back in the day, the WCW, the way the WWE used to be, and all the other shows that were all the territories and things like that kind of went in beforehand. So I think it's kind of the same thing with MMA. That's kind of their version of it. So just to know the history, I think those are the true fans to know, and obviously the Pride days, right? So
Yeah, I'm just really waiting for like someone to do like someone outside of the UFC, because UFC is the one that always usually tells these stories, and because they won, if they can spin the narrative like how
yeah,
WWE does with WCW and ECW. But
yeah,
someone outside, please do a 30 for 30 or a serious documentary on Elite XC or Affliction, because there's just so much information that people are not remembering or didn't know about. Like we need to bring it back.
yeah. I would love to watch something like that, man. That'd be
Like
fun.
I don't know if you watched the Tito and Chuck one, that 30 for 30 that ESPN did. Like it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I did. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Like it's pretty good, but I think they're forgetting the point, like how big UFC 40 Shamrock and Ortiz was. Like that
Right,
was
that
really the
was that was
launching
the
pad.
one. That was that I remember. I don't know how old I was. I might have been like grade 9 or some shit, but I remember that was like probably the most anticipated I ever was for a pay-per-view. I remember me and my buddies watched like the trailers for it for weeks leading up to it, and that was awesome, man. And I was like, a big Shamrock fan because I was a wrestling fan back in the day, right? Like most kids were, and but I also did like Tito. So and then it was coming in MMA. So I was rooting for Ken, even though I knew that he was probably going to take a beating, which he did. But it was that show was amazing, man.
Oh, it's like so fantastic. Like they
Yeah.
got on Fox Sports Net at the time to promote it, and it was Ken's first fight post WWE. I
Mhm.
mean, he had fought in Pride beforehand, but still, like it was really cool. Ken and his sideburns too,
Yeah,
wicked sideburns like
yeah,
that.
wicked sideburns, man. He
They were
looked like a savage.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I know they were amazing, but yeah, like that stuff's not really covered. They're, like people just glance over it, but like it's crazy. Like, and as you said, you were into it, but did you own any of the Tito Ortiz flamed Scullies? Because that was a look for a while.
You know what? I think I do still have them. I remember my mom bought me one for Christmas one year, and I think I do still have it somewhere. It was the white and black
Yeah,
flame one. Yeah, yeah.
it,
So
it
I
was
did I
that
did rock that for a bit. You know, I
that
remember
was
speaking of like the apparel, I remember my biggest favorite, like my favorite brand back then when all the brands were, the thing was Full Contact Fighter.
uh-huh.
Because I was a big like Hughes fan and Rich Flanken, they always wore that, and Jens Pulver, and but I remember having buying that shirt with like the fighter on it just like this, and that was my number one shirt I wanted to get. But I don't think they're around anymore. At least they're not making them anymore. I don't think. But that would be a brand I'd love to see come back.
Oh God, there was that era. There was also that part of that era. It was like you got Affliction and you got
Uh,
all these skull shirts and these
oh
like
Christ!
$200 jeans. And I
Yeah,
was a dethroned guy, and I've looked back at some of the pictures. Like, what was I thinking? Like,
yeah.
honest to God, what was I thinking? This was fashion.
Yeah, it was I remember I had one Affliction shirt and it was like it actually wasn't too bad. It was like a golf one. I think my mom bought me for Christmas or something like that. But I never had all those, crazy, you know, flary shirts and those, weird looking jeans and stuff like that. But it was a weird time.
It really was. It was an abomination in fashion upon looking back at some of these older shows. But you know what? Hopefully, that's the one thing the newer fans have. They didn't have to wear that crap. So
Now they just get stuck with Reebok or whatever is next, whatever, So
it's
you know what? I like it better the way it was.
yeah, yeah. I guess the Reba. That's true. You don't have to buy a fight kit, which is just the most embarrassing thing. I
Nope.
couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I would. I mean, some people buy them, I guess, but I don't know how. But like for me, when I was a fan before I even started training, I would, I loved, like I said, Full Contact Fighter. Obviously, Tap Out that was around, but I remember Fifth Round or One More Round or whatever it was called.
The
There was
toys.
no, it was the shirt. Like, was it One More Round? I can't remember.
One more
Uh,
round, I think, was the brand for
yeah,
clothing.
right. But yeah, they had so many, man. Like Venom, Venom's still around. But yeah, there were so many different, clothing companies that are gone now. But that was the thing, and then you'd see so many different fighters sponsored by them, and then you kind of like correlate the fighter to what they would always wear. So that's kind of gone now, right? So it kind of sucks to see.
Yeah, Hitman fight gear. I always remember Martin the
Yeah,
Hitman Campman wearing it.
yeah,
Thought that was awesome.
right.
But Venom, though, now they're the new official apparel for the UFC. They'll
Yeah.
be making the new kits and everything like that. So there is at least hope for the kits that they can look better because Venom at least has a long history of being involved in MMA and in apparel.
Yeah, I give them props. They survived the years, and now they're kind of getting a chance to do that. And they're a true MMA company that's been around, not just a sporting goods brand that just kind of swooped in and took over.
Yeah, well, Josh, this was a lot of fun. I mean, we didn't miss too much. Not a lot really happened. I mean,
No.
there was that sad story about Erwin Rivera stabbing his sisters and stuff like that, which is real unfortunate. But hopefully Erwin gets the help he needs because that's just this ultimately sad story. Like, there's nothing other to say than it's just sad.
I didn't look into it. I just heard some MMA fighter stabbed. Did he kill his sister or did he just
No,
stab?
they both lived actually.
Oh wow, good. I mean that's fortunate, but yeah, it's pretty crazy that you're stabbing anyone, let alone your sister. So I didn't really, like I said, I didn't go follow into it, but that sucks, man.
Yeah, it's hopefully he gets some mental health because it's like seems like signs of CTE or whatever. But that's really all the major stuff that we that had occurred in the time we were off. But more importantly, it was good to preview the UFC upcoming on Saturday afternoon, and just for a glimpse down the past, because I don't think a lot of people can really remember that. Like, can you believe, Josh, this year, I believe this June, is 10 years since the Score Fighting Series debuted as well?
Really? Oh man.
Score
Shit.
Fighting Series debuted 10 years ago this June.
Wow, man, I'm getting old. I'm getting so old. This is crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's still, it doesn't feel that long. Like, it
No,
feels like I've been in the game, a few years. But yeah, it's been since 2009. So it'll be like coming up 12 years, so it's been a long time, man. A lot of shit has happened. A lot of people came and went. A lot of organizations have come and gone, and some rose, some failed. But yeah, it's been this decade anyway. The last decade has been pretty crazy.
it's just to me that 2011 is 10 years ago now. Like, I was just finishing up college.
Buddy,
Like
I still think it's like 2004. You know what I mean? I do. I don't like. I can't believe it's 2021 already, which is
Dude, I
insane.
wish it was. I wish it was 2004. The Leafs would have made it out of the first round of a playoff series
Buddy,
then
I
if it was
wish it was
2000.
1996 again. That would be pretty awesome.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, maybe MMA wouldn't be as big, but this could have been like, if podcasts were a thing, this could have been a Monday Night Wars podcast or anything like that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we're still waiting for the NWO to debut at this point if it's 1996.
Yeah, back in the good old days.
Yeah, exactly. When things were normal. But Josh, it was fun, and I'm excited to get back with this. I mean, MMA is gonna be back and rolling. I mean, you're letting your hair down now, and it's time for us to get out of here. But if you want to plug any of your social media platforms or anything like that again, where people can find you, and we can get back to doing these, because I'm excited. It was a nice break, but it's good to get back talking with you.
Yeah, I mean it's always good to kind of have a break from everything, but yeah, it's always fun to chat. And Gentleman J Hill, Instagram and Facebook. That's it right now. And no news yet on anything, man. But for fight wise for me, and hopefully we have some news eventually that we could get back in there as far as commentating BTC fights coming up. I don't know. We'll see what happens with this province. We're hoping, we're being optimistic about it, but we'll just kind of, time will tell.
Yeah, I'm still optimistic. Actually, I'm more optimistic now than I would been, say, maybe 3 months ago or whatever. But I'm more optimistic. We'll be out there, and we'll be back cage side calling some fights and continuing this fun little show. So as always, everyone, like, rate, subscribe, comment, whatever. Josh and I'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel.